Hello Otters, Mrs. Share here. It's our next chapter of Gangster Granny. Now if you remember, Granny's in hospital because she'd had a fall and Ben had been visiting her and they were getting plans together on how to get into the Tower of London to steal the crown jewels. So let's read our next chapter, which is chapter 20, and it's called Boom, Boom, Boom. Ben couldn't believe what Granny had just said. There was no way he would risk stealing the crown jewels only to put them back to the very next night. But they are worth millions and billions even, he complained. I know, so we'd definitely get caught if we tried to sell them, replied Granny. But, no buts, boy, we put them back the next night. Do you know how I evaded prison all these years? I never sold a thing. I just did it for the buzz. But you kept them though, said Ben. Even if you didn't sell them, you've got them all stashed in your biscuit tin. Granny blinked. Yes, well, I was young and foolish then, she said. I have learnt since that it is wrong to steal, and you need to understand that too. She gave him a fierce look. Ben squirmed. I do, of course I do. It's a brilliant plan you've put together, Ben. Honestly, it is. But those jewels don't belong to us, do they? No, said Ben. No, they don't. He felt a tiny bit ashamed now that he'd been so horrified at the idea of giving back the jewels. And don't forget that every policeman in the country, maybe even the world, will be looking for the crown jewels. They'll have all of Scotland Yard after us. If we were found with them, we'd be thrown into prison for the rest of our lives. That might not be so long for me, but it could be about 70 or 80 years for you. You're right, said Ben, and the Queen seems like such a nice old dear. We are around the same age, actually. I would hate to upset her. Me too, murmured Ben. He had seen the Queen on the news loads of times, and she seemed like a nice old lady, smiling and waving to everybody from the back of her giant pram. Let's just do it for the thrill. Agreed? Agreed, said Ben. When can we do it? It will have to be Friday night when Mum and Dad take me to stay at yours. Did the doctor say when you'll be out of hospital? Oh yes, he did. He said I could leave any time. Fantastic! But we need to do it very soon. How about next Friday? Isn't that too soon? No, not at all. Your plan seems very well thought out. Thank you, said Ben, beaming. It was the first time ever that he'd felt like he had made grown-ups proud of him. When I get out of here, I'll get on to pinching the equipment we need. Now run along, Ben, and I will see you next Friday night at the usual time. Ben pulled back the curtain. Mr. Parker, Granny's nosy neighbour, was standing right there. Startled, Ben took a couple of steps back towards the bed and quickly shoved the Plumbing Weekly up the back of his jumper. What are you doing here? Asked Ben. Hoping to see me take a bed bath, no doubt, said Granny. Ben chuckled. Mr. Parker scrambled for words. No, Matron, hollered Granny. Wait, said Mr. Parker, panicking. I'm sure I heard one of you talking about the crown jewels. It was too late. The matron, who was unusual tall lady with very big feet, clumped down the ward at speed. Yes, asked the matron. Is something the matter? This man was spying at me through the curtains, said Granny. Were you? Demanded matron, eyeballing Mr. Parker. Well, I heard that they were, whined Mr. Parker. Last week, he spied on my Granny doing her naked yoga, offered Ben. Matron's face turned puce with horror. Get out of my ward at once, you filthy little swine, she screamed. Humiliated, Mr. Parker backed away from the terrifying matron and scuttled out of the ward. He paused at the swing doors and yelled back to the Granny and Ben, You haven't seen the last of me, before rushing out. Please let me know if that man comes back, said Matron, her face returning to a normal shade. I will, replied Granny, before Matron returned to her duties. He couldn't have heard anything, hissed Ben. Maybe, replied Granny, but I think Matron scared him off for good. I hope so. Ben was very worried about this unfortunate development. Do you still want to go through with it? Asked the old lady. Ben had that feeling you have when you are on a roller coaster and it's slowly making its way up the track. You want to get off and you want to stay on. Dread and delight all rolled into one. Yes, he said. Hooray, said Granny, giving Ben a big smile. Ben turned to leave, then turned around. I love you, Granny, he said. And I love you too, little Benny, said Granny with a wink. Ben winced. He had a gangster Granny now, and that was great, but he was going to have to teach her just to call him Ben and not Benny. Ben ran along the corridors, his heart beating incredibly fast. Boom, boom, boom. He was electrified with excitement. This 11-year-old boy, who had never done anything notable in his life except once being sick on his friend's head on the big wheel at the local fun fair, was going to take part in the most daring robbery the world had ever seen. He ran outside the hospital and began fumbling with the keys to unlock his bike from the railings. Then, looking back, he saw something unbelievable. It was his Granny. That isn't unusual, but this is. Granny was abseiling down the side of the hospital. And there she is, can you see? It looks like she's tied some sheets together like a rope and she's coming down the side of the building. She had tied a number of bed sheets together and was lowering herself at speed down the side of the building. Ben couldn't believe his eyes. He knew his Granny was a proper gangster, but this was off the scale. Granny, what on earth are you doing? Shouted Ben across the car park. The lift wasn't working, dear. See you next Friday. Don't be late, she shouted as she reached the ground, leaped on her mobility scooter and roared off. Well, whirred off home. Never had a week passed so slowly. Ben spent all week waiting for Friday to come. Every minute, every hour, every day seemed like an eternity. It was strange having to pretend he was just another ordinary boy, when really he was one of the greatest criminal masterminds of all time. Finally, Friday evening came. There was a knock on Ben's bedroom door. Rat-a-tat-tat. Well, are you ready, son? Said Dad. Yeah, said Ben, trying to act as innocent as possible, which is actually quite hard when you are feeling extremely guilty. You don't need to pick me up too early in the morning tomorrow. Granny and I normally play Scrabble until quite late. You won't be playing Scrabble, son, said Dad. No? No, son, you won't be going to Granny's tonight at all. Oh, no, said Ben. Is she back in hospital? No, she's not. Ben sighed with relief, then felt a prickle of anxiety. So why am I not going to her house? The plan was in place and there was no time to lose. Because, said Dad, tonight it's the under-12 dancing championships. At last it's your big moment to shine. What's going to happen? Oh my goodness, they've made all these plans. Will they? Won't they? We'll find out next time, children. But until then, keep reading at home. Bye-bye.